So my name is Keith McCarty. I'm the CEO and founder of WAYV. I'll just give a quick kind of background about myself, and we're here to talk about how technology is influencing the cannabis industry, specifically the B2B supply chain, and then giving some insights and some kind of projections as to what we feel is coming down the road. So as Cheryl mentioned, and thanks Cheryl, my background's in technology, so I've been in technology for the past 10 years. Out of college, I founded a company called Yammer, and Yammer is basically Facebook for inside of your company. And what we found was that every day we use things like Instagram or Facebook or things like that to connect with our family and friends, but when we go to work, we don't really have those same types of tools. And so there was obviously a need there for one-to-many communication, so we ended up building it. We launched that in September 2008. Over the course of 3.5 years, we were selling to 80% of the Global 500 and scaled it to about 800 employees and ended up exiting to Microsoft for $1.2 billion in June 2012. So it was a successful exit, but that's really where I learned how to capital raise. That's where I learned how to scale teams and also build scalable technology, providing a real solution. In June 2012, I had a one-year commitment at Microsoft. Didn't want to be at Microsoft, so left right after 1 year. But that's really when I started really looking at what I wanted to do next, and that's about the time that on-demand consumer services started becoming popular. As we all know, probably Uber and Lyft really paved the way with ride-sharing, but you can really apply that technology to any product and service. And so I literally looked at every product and service because I wanted to do something on demand. And cannabis kept popping up as a natural fit. Not a cannabis user myself, but it was really intriguing to me how great of a fit it would be for on-demand. So I did a bunch of research, and the research showed that, turns out the year that we got acquired by Microsoft was the first year that the majority of Americans favored legalization. And so that's the first time in history, and my hypothesis was that it was going to continue to move in towards legalization, but happen at a faster clip. Obviously, in hindsight, that's come true. And then, so I knew that it was going to be a big business. I figured it would be a big business, but I had to develop more ethos around why we're building this. Is this actually a good thing? Is cannabis good? So I interviewed a bunch of patients, probably 150 plus patients, just sat at a dispensary, literally buying product for people, and just to hear them, tell me how it's benefiting them, and developed a lot of ethos and really truly understood how cannabis can impact people's lives. I think that's really important, to attach yourself to something that gets you up every morning. Startups are hard. This industry is tough. Anything in this industry is like 100 times harder than any other industry, I would say. So I think you really need to have a good reason as to why you're doing this, aside from money. So I ended up launching Ease. Ease is the company. The media calls it Uber for marijuana. But basically it's a solution where you can select what you want and via your mobile device. And with a click of a button, get it delivered to you anywhere in California in about 15 minutes. The company is now doing a delivery every 10 seconds and is a leader, I would say, in the industry. So while running Ease and being the CEO through the end of 2016, we really started pushing the limits in terms of the amount of product and inventory that we were selling, and really what the demand was from the brands, right? So deeper in supply chain. I started to understand that it really was inefficient, and there was a lot of friction, and it was unnecessary, and that technology could really be a player to help streamline that. The other hypothesis I made was that as we move towards legalization, there's also technology is really great at in terms of ensuring compliance. So we ended up developing and building and launching WAYV, which is a B2B platform. It's a e-commerce logistics platform that connects retailers and brands through centralized distribution, providing next day delivery throughout the state of California. Today it has over 50 brands on the platform, doing a standard next day delivery. But really there's some key aspects to it that really make it special. One of which is, it's all about kind of the experience when a brand is looking to hand over their product and put it in the hands of a distributor. There's a lot of trust that needs to go into that. So trust and transparency really is key. So another one of the values of technology is that you can ensure that things happen because of the different technologies or different processes that you can build along the way to actually measure or make sure that they're happening with oversight, and then provide that transparency to both the counterparts. In this case, they happen to be retailers and brands. So technology is really key in this area. It's also extends beyond, just for the retailers and brands. I think as we continue to look at the evolution of the industry, there's other key areas that are going to become critical, such as like banking. So having transparency and oversight and regulation with banks or payment processors, that's something that is nearly impossible without technology, and what will be key for the continued growth of this industry. Right, the industry is moving. It's the fastest growing industry in the world. It's growing 40% year over year, and huge opportunity. But there's a lot of area for improvement in some of these key functions. Right, they either don't exist. In order to have them exist, it requires some additional foundation building, and we believe that technology and the piping really around logistics is going to be a key player in making sure that happens. Let me just go back to my notes here. So, I'd say that, just going back to WAYV for a little bit, and the transparency and trust, WAYV is really a true horizontal layer across the industry. And I think that's not common, right? Even if you look at ease delivery or delivery to consumers, that's not the entire industry. It's not how every consumer wants to get their product. You have, on the flip side, the brick and mortars. Brick and mortars are where consumers walk into to be consulted with a person face to face, touch it, feel it, purchase it, walk out the store. But with distribution, we actually serve both of those outlets, right? We serve the depots for delivery services or the non-storefronts, as well as the retailers where consumers walk in. So we truly are the horizontal layer across the industry. I'm not sure how many different areas there are that could say that. I'd say kind of finance or banking would be kind of another one, but that's a little bit non-existent at this point, or at least it's not fully rolled out. There's still a lot of cash that's happening as far as transactions. So what ends up happening is, we can truly be a Switzerland, and we can be agnostic, and we can truly look at, how do we serve the broader industry, and how do we really become an ally and a partner, both to all retailers, whether it's non-storefront or storefront, and all brands, right? So I think it puts us in a unique position to really look at things holistically and to really be a true partner. Some of the ways in which we partner and help brands are, to increase sales or increase revenue, decrease costs, like I said before, provide transparency, compliance. A lot of these functions are much needed. The other thing is that I think one of the gentlemen earlier was mentioning how we need to band together, right? So we're a strong believer in best of breed. I know brands, really don't want to do distribution today, and I think that's a good choice. It's hard enough to be a brand on your own, especially in this highly competitive, fast-growing, ever-changing industry. So I think it requires 100% focus to do just that and be good at it, as opposed to worrying about vehicles bumping into each other in the parking lot. It's a very difficult problem to solve on its own, let alone if I was trying to run, be a brand as well. So we're a big believer in kind of best of breed, and that's really where we can partner or be a solution provider for both retailers and brands in this case. So the next thing I guess I would say is, just even hitting on, how cannabis is supporting, or technology rather, is supporting the cannabis B2B supply chain. So I talked about from a technology perspective, like literally, scalable, it's replicable, it's agile. All those things are very important when you're in the fastest growing industry in the world, and when you have basically different geographies that have different sets of regulations and are at different stages. I break the various stages of the cannabis evolution for legalization in each state into 4 main areas. So like medical V1, which is really limited set of ailments, right? Like cancer, Alzheimer's. You basically, it's not very many people. You have to go to a doctor, lots of friction. V2 would be as soon as they add pain, right? As soon as they add pain, it's pseudo recreational or adult use. But there's still a lot of friction in that environment. It requires the need to have a recommendation letter or a prescription. V3 would be, adult use or recreational, but sort of the horse trade there is that, you have high taxes, so at least it's regulated, and taxes are good, of course, putting that money towards schools, books, education. But it doesn't really do anything to really help shift to disrupt the illicit activity, right? That still exists because you're kind of priced out. So you've removed the friction, but but now you have a really, high cost. And to Cheryl's point around the price sensitivity of the consumers, they are very price sensitive. We had, tons of data from ease, obviously, and consumer data, and following regression curves that show, price to volume ratios, and I can just tell you that it's a very price sensitive market, especially for certain segments such as millennials, millennial males specifically, which 4 years ago was by far the biggest segment. And then V4 or version 4, and by the way, I would say California's in stage 3. Phase 4 is adult use, but with reduced taxes. So the state wakes up, says, if we reduce taxes by 5%, we can actually generate more revenue, disrupt the illicit, and actually, as an aggregate total amount of dollars, generate more for our state. So these are very, very different stages for the cannabis industry or the operators that are operating within those states at those various stages. Technology needs to be able to be adaptable to any one of those, even with the differences in the regulations within each of that state. So, once again, it's very difficult to do without technology. That's where technology, another benefit of it for this industry specifically. Also, those phases and those regulations are changing very fast. So being able to shift or configure these certain insurances or assurances around compliance or operational efficiency is very difficult to do, or you're not maximizing, I guess, the output unless you're utilizing technology. Technology becomes an aid in supporting that effort. I'd also say that there's other industries that are coming into cannabis, of course, the alcohol companies, Constellation, the big tobacco, the pharmaceutical. All of these industries, when we show them what we've built, for example, WAYV, but I'm sure that there's other technologies within this industry, they're jealous, right? They're like, man, I wish we could have that. That's like amazing. And we live in a technology era. The cannabis industry is evolving at the fastest rate in an era where technology is like, all of us are walking around with a mobile device, right? All of us are using technology. A lot of us grew up with technology. And I think that we have an opportunity to embrace it. And like I said, a lot of these other industries that were, started, long before the technology revolution, they didn't have the opportunity, or that shift becomes much more difficult. So I really think that we have a big opportunity to embrace and leverage technology to help grow this industry in a responsible and really the most efficient way possible. I think it will be a big conduit and a big enabler for a lot of the goals that I'm sure everyone in this room has. And then, of course, we get all the same benefits that all the other industries get by utilizing technology as well. So improving operations or lowering the cost of doing business, improving transparency and oversight, like I mentioned before. Distraction costs, I mentioned that, enables brands to build brands, retailers to focus on consumer experience, so they don't have to do a lot of these functions that technology can provide. And then, for regulators even to better be able to track, the enforcement of the regulations that they're creating. So it's one thing to create regulations, it's another thing to actually be able to enforce it or have oversight over it. Your regulation is good, but without technology, I feel that it probably would be, it probably wouldn't be able to be as robust, or there would be broken links in the chain, and therefore it would almost become meaningless, I would say. So given all that, we have some trends or different perspectives that we believe in are going to happen or continue to see happen. So the first is that the cannabis industry is really kind of like tech savvy, because when you look at the biggest segment of the cannabis industry, it is millennials, right? These are people that grew up with technology, in their everyday lives. They expect, just like what we saw with Yammer, when people expected to have the same sort of collaboration solution when they go to work. Now millennials are expecting to, for example, a purchasing manager at a retailer is expecting to be able to order or restock the shelves for that retailer the same way that they order on Amazon, right? So I think that because the millennials are the biggest segment within the cannabis industry, and as they continue to grow older and stay in the industry, we'll continue to see that technology is a staple, or something that not only is a nice to have, but it's almost required from the employee or the workforce. Let's say the other thing is, kind of the macro around e-commerce. So, most companies need to establish either a proper e-commerce strategy. The Amazon effect is real. It's a thing for sure. I don't think that anybody can deny that. These same concepts, but for the cannabis industry, are going to continue to play a big part as well, I would say. So if you're a brand and you're looking at a sales strategy or increasing revenue or brand exposure, how to get the voice of your brand out, there's just so many areas where e-commerce can help, and should certainly be a part of your strategy if it's not already. And I would say from a purchasing perspective, same thing. If you're not utilizing or researching at least e-commerce solutions, then you're probably not discovering all of the great innovations that are happening around brand manufacturing. There's just like so many really interesting and cool things that we see kind of taking off from just different consumption methods or different effects, or getting more honed in on these different innovations that the consumers really expect when they go to the retail storefront or when ordering on a delivery service. And so if you're not staying on top of that through discovery or optimizing to make sure that you're restocking your shelves on time, so when they go back, that product is there, then I think you're really doing your business and overall your customers a disservice. So e-commerce will certainly play a role. The other part is FinTech. So I think a lot of people they focus on like the financial side with banking, and that's certainly important. But I think that I think we're going to move past that pretty quickly. And I think that how people should really be looking at this is like a FinTech, right? Not just like, where do I put my money? It's like, how do I move my money? How do I triage? How do I factor? How do I extend credit line? How do I grow my business from a FinTech perspective? And it's not just like moving it into a digital realm per se. It's like, how do you maximize the movement of that money within digital? So I think at a high level, WAYV is really solving two big areas. It's not only providing the logistics for how to move product or branded product from a brand through centralized distribution to the retailer the most seamless and efficient way, but it's also, which you'll continue to see as we evolve and grow our overall offering, is how do we get the money from the retailer back through the distributor down to the brand. That's essentially the machine that we're building, and it's probably the machine for most businesses, to be honest. So these are really big, big pieces. WAYV is certainly well positioned to do it because it's a horizontal layer. We believe that from a financial perspective, technology plays a big role there because of digital aspects of it, and things like KYC, which is know your customer. It's a big requirement for banks, and a lot of these things like we just naturally already have, and we're able to share or pass in a trusted, fast and compliant way. So FinTech, keep your eyes on that, or just ask your solution providers what their strategy is there, and make sure that that you're not just buying for today, because a lot of these things you're kind of committing to, and you're buying for the future as well. So that's That's all I have. I think I only had 10 or 15 minutes. I guess what I would say in ending is, we have a booth here. Our contact information was up there, but but it's just www.wayv.com. And then if you need to reach out to us, my personal email address is Keith, Keith, @wayv.com. And yeah, we look forward to continuing the conversation, or I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has any.
Questions, anyone? This is a huge opportunity. Keith doesn't go out to a lot of these things, and he's truly a genius and a nice person.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
What would you say is your biggest roadblock to getting an application on like App Store that can't?
The biggest roadblock would be the Apple, not it breaking their terms. So, it depends what type of application. Of course, there's applications out there. There's a kind of tricky or ways around it, of course. But what we found is that we want to provide the richest experience for the end user. In our case, for Ease, it would be the consumer. For Wave, it would be the retailer and the brand. And because we're really a logistics platform and we're handling or providing, an experience to move the product and to actually move the payment, we tend to jump right into where Apple doesn't want us to be. So we focus on a really rich mobile web experience, and and I think you can get really close there. Obviously, it's a shift in terms of the talent that you hire. It's a slightly different strategy. There are things that you can do with an app to complement that, but we didn't want to have kind of a disjointed experience, and we weren't going to sacrifice the experience just because Apple didn't want us to do certain things that we feel are important.
Next question? Yes.
My question is just about WAYV and how you guys operate legally. Do you guys need a license to operate, and kind of just what are some of the pitfalls that you found?
Okay, so the question is, with your current company, WAYV, how do you go about getting an application? What's the process for someone that might be interested in technology?
So I think you were asking what the model is for WAYV in terms of needing a license or not, and I can answer that, and I can maybe answer in addition if there was something else. But basically, when I looked at, I knew I wanted to do B2B logistics, for this next company for WAYV, but I didn't know if I was going to have to verticalize. By verticalization, I mean touching the plant and the transaction. So because distribution is allowed, and in a lot of cases or most needed, required by regulations in pretty much all the other states and even globally, we knew that this is going to be something that would expand really fast. So technology, as mentioned, is highly scalable. For us, we could expand, right now if we wanted to pull up the computer and I flip a switch and we'd be in whatever state you want us to be in, right? So it can scale extremely fast, the fastest aspect of the industry. Physical infrastructure doesn't scale quite as fast. So we didn't want our limiting factor based on expansion to be, to essentially be owning the physical infrastructure. Now, you need physical infrastructure because that's essentially they're touching the product and they're touching, the money and things like that. So basically what I did was I went around and I talked to all the leading distributors, and they all wanted to partner with WAYV. I think we really sharpened our elbows in cannabis tech and logistics with Ease. We understand, how to do this extremely well. And so I think all of them wanted to have this kind of partnership. But we ended up, choosing one that's, for now, that basically handles the physical infrastructure while WAYV handles the technology infrastructure. So because and we basically run their operations in a lot of ways, or they utilize our technology to run their operations via the technology, right? So we don't actually need a license as a technology solution, but anybody who's utilizing the platform absolutely does. And we actually do a lot there to integrate with the state databases in a real-time manner, check active licenses if they're active, or if they've been expired, revoked, suspended, so that not only are you providing permissions or allowing people to only take actions that they're allowed to do, like a retailer is allowed to do different things than, let's say, a manufacturer, but also that that their license is active. So that kind of hits on the distribution partner side, technology or WAYV not needing a license, and also our other customers, which are retailers and brands, and how we ensure the compliance there as far as licensing.
The other great thing about Ease was it was so much easier than having to get dressed to go to the dispensaries. Any other questions? One last question. Come on, there you go.
Throwing out there as a bit of a softball. I spent some time with your team, so I'll qualify that, and I'm not part of the team.
I feel like there's more pressure when you say that. What if I mess it up?
No compensation required. So, a bit of softball. So, one of the things I found interesting in talking to the team was that a lot of the infrastructure and technology is very expensive to deploy internally. And the traditional way of doing business is it's very belly to belly. If I have a new brand, I have to put into my budget an intense amount of money to employ a sales team, train a sales team, ultimately cater to buyers. How if I had a new brand and I was looking to launch as a small company with a modest budget, how would your technology platform enable me and how would that work?
Well, look, so if you know anything about economies of scale, you would say that you would know that the larger companies without a solution like WAYV would have an advantage over the smaller ones, right? Either a cost or a sort of a service offering. So as a new brand, essentially what you get with WAYV is, one, a better service than even the biggest brands individually can provide, and you get that same overall value, the same service offering that the biggest ones get as well for the same cost, right? So I'd say that there's certainly that aspect. So, and that's more on the fulfillment transport side, I would say. So standard next day delivery, the centralized line of credit that's extended to not pull from your capital to take on that default risk, ensure cash flow, and then obviously the rates that are associated with that. That's the same for big brands or small brands. So it kind of democratizes in a lot of ways the fragmented brands, but really making a more even playing field, I would say, from a distribution perspective between the biggest to the smallest. The other thing that I would say is we're already distributing to over 80% of the compliant retailers in California. So if you're a new brand, like that's a huge greenfield that you get the opportunity to market to. So I'd say that you're obviously, there's a bigger delta essentially that you have to cover to get into kind of new retailers that we already have plugged in that are already going to the solution. So you may actually benefit in a lot of ways a lot more than a bigger brand who's already in those retailers, or maybe was in those retailers even before a WAYV-like solution was made available.
In a compressed time frame, a fraction of time.
Right. Yep.
Very good, you're hired.
So basically better and less expensive. And I think if you have both those and it scales, for the biggest to the mid-size to the smallest brands or retailers, I think you're onto something pretty big potentially. And that's what we have at WAYV.